Back in early 2012, shortly after Rocket Chainsaw launched, I decided to launch a feature called Speculation with the aim of investigating unannounced titles and the probability of them being announced within the near future. For whatever reason, probably laziness and forgetfulness, we've only ever done one, and it was for Eternal Darkness on the Wii U. That didn't quite pan out, but as we approach the anniversary of the Speculation feature, I thought it might be fun to revive it and try my hand at predicting another title. And as we slowly but surely approach E3 2013, I'm going to put my money on a sequel I would like to see that will hopefully be announced, and one that I think has a pretty good case behind it. I'm talking, of course, of Deus Ex 4, or as you might know it, Human Revolution 2. But rather than just make shit up, I do have a basis for why I think a new Deus Ex might be on the way, and it all started with the registration of two domain names. The first was Deus Ex Human Defiance, a new domain registration with obvious ties straight back to Square Enix. You might have seen this in the news recently, as it had Deus Ex fans buzzing. Connotations within the name, Human Defiance, would be ideal for a game situated in the canon between Human Revolution and the original Deus Ex, leading many to believe this could be a sequel. As the old saying goes, where there's smoke, there's fire, and though Human Defiance is indeed a real project, it was not the one gaming fans expected. Subsequent registration details indicated Human Defiance was also tied to CBS Films, the production company currently at work building a Deus Ex themed movie. At least we know now the title of that. Just as Deus Ex fans were putting their augmented party hats away, a second domain name popped up. Deus Ex The Fall. Just as with Human Defiance, The Fall would fit right into the canon, detailing the collapse of a near-future society under the weight of a techno-revolution. But is it a game? Unlike Human Defiance, there are no known ties to external or partner companies, just Square Enix. In reality, it could be any number of things. Book, web series, comic, iOS title, anything. But for the time being, it's also the best shot for a new game. And what better way to promote a new game than to coincide the announcement alongside the movie? First, we should probably ask ourselves whether or not Eidos Montreal are up to the task of working on a new Deus Ex. After all, they only just announced their next major game, Thief 4, which is targeting a release next year and will likely be playable at E3 2013. To best understand whether or not Montreal has the chops to take on multiple projects, it's easier to go back to where it all began, 2007. This was a year that both Eidos Montreal and Human Revolution were announced, and when studio director Stéphane Dastou laid out the company's future. In an interview with Develop Online in November 2007, Stéphane was reported as saying that the studio currently only had one core development team, dedicated to Human Revolution, and would look towards a second development team by June 2008, and finally a third team by June 2009. They would accomplish this by expanding the studio with around 350 new jobs over the course of 3 years, enforcing a 24-month full production timeline for each of the active teams. As anybody following Human Revolution's development would know, Montreal didn't quite stick to this schedule. By their estimates, Human Revolution probably should have shipped around November 2009, but was instead delayed until August 2011. This is a fairly gigantic margin of error that throws the game plan off a bit. But post-release interviews and quotes from Montreal during the 2011 year managed to paint a portrait of the company's status. In an interview with Edge in September 2011, Montreal was confirmed to have at least 330 active personnel, as parent company Square Enix detailed plans to grow the studio to a total of 680 staff over 3 more years. The first 100 new staff were to be hired by the end of 2012, with the remainder made up by 2015. Only 2 months later, Edge's November report further elaborated on Square Enix's plans for Eidos Montreal. According to them, a total of 250 new staff were set to be hired. Of those, 150 would go to the newly established Square Enix Montreal, a studio founded to partner with IO Interactive to work on another Hitman game second to Hitman Absolution. The remaining 100 staff would go directly to Eidos Montreal, expanding their available staff to 430 to work on ongoing Deus Ex and Thief development, as well as a third unannounced project. And there we have our 3 active development teams. Square Enix stating ongoing Deus Ex development in November 2011 should raise a few eyebrows, because as far as the general public was aware, no other Deus Ex project existed at all. Human Revolution had shipped in August, and the mini expansion pack, The Missing Link, had gone live in October. As early as 2009, Thief 4 was known to be in the first stages of development, though by reports was said to be in the hands of a small team, and then by 2010, Eidos Montreal would expand a separate team to focus exclusively on multiplayer development, something we'd later learn was set for Crystal Dynamics' Tomb Raider. And it wasn't until May 2012 that we were first teased with the supposed leak of Montreal's third project, one covering a sword and shield wielding hero seeking to save his love, Nova, with the aid of a sexy mercenary. Given that this is a studio with, at this point in time, anywhere between 300 to 450 staff, it's hard to believe all were stretched across Thief and Tomb Raider's multiplayer, as well as the third project, especially with Square Enix letting slip that more Deus Ex was to come. Though Eidos Montreal has done a pretty good job of keeping a tight lid on things, their intention to grow the studio requires job advertisements, and public job advertisements have a tendency to let a few things slip. While taking a gander at Eidos Montreal's recruitment page, nothing immediately stands out, but looking a little deeper at 2 open positions for an unannounced project reveals a little more. One position, open to a senior game writer, requires a writer proficient in the design of parallel stories, specifying side quests that support the main theme and structure of the critical narrative path. Another position, this time for a weapons concept artist, stresses the value of someone with an eye for technical, industrial, and mechanical design. I don't think it's a stretch to say both of these requirements would fit right at home with a traditional Deus Ex game. It's also worth noting that neither of these ads are for Thief 4, which has its own recruitment category. Then there's the not-so-vague ad posted, then quickly taken down, from LinkedIn back in May 2012. Specifying a rapidly growing studio in the region of Montreal, though not naming names, the ad requested hires for a project based on a well-known and respected existing IP, one that put emphasis on elements of choice, stealth, as well as consequences for player actions and choice. Sound familiar? It seems to me fairly obvious that Eidos Montreal, along with Square Enix, have full intention of developing a new Deus Ex game. And given the size of the studio, I wouldn't think it's a stretch to say a Deus Ex title for next-generation systems could be well into development. Let's recap. Around 2007, Montreal had begun work on Human Revolution, with the intention of growing to at least 350 staff by 2010. In 2011, we learned that the studio was standing at least 330 personnel tall, with the intention to grow further, likely hitting 430 by the end of 2012, and in the early stages of 2013 perhaps even more. And consider what projects the studio has worked on, and continues to work on. Human Revolution was finished almost 2 years ago, as was The Missing Link, whereas Tomb Raider shipped this month. Both of these teams have been free to work on other projects for some time, as pre-production generally starts before a title ships. Thief 4 is set for a release in 2014 and is likely deep into production, though is being worked on by a completely separate team to that of which was worked on Deus Ex and Tomb Raider. The only other known project is the mysterious third. Having a completely ludicrous amount of staff grind away at a single project is only normal if you're aiming for a very short Blitzkrieg-like development cycle, best suited to annual release franchises like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed. As was stated back in 2007 by Montreal's director, this is a production company who is far more flexible, preferring the 24-month production period. With this in mind, note it does not take 430 workers to finish 2 projects over 24 plus months. That's overkill. Though I'm very confident in assuming a new Deus Ex is definitely in development, assuming an announcement sooner rather than later is mostly derived from the domain registrations. Square Enix generally has a history of announcing titles shortly after domain registrations, as this wouldn't be the first time the name of a new title was leaked this way. I also think E3 2013 would be an ideal point to announce a game like this. Unlike previous years, 2 new systems showing up will lead to more eyes than usual watching what's on offer, making this period ideal for generating buzz for next-generation games, especially in the case of Deus Ex, where 24 months after Human Revolution would be an ideal point to show what the team has been working on, as well as feed off marketing hype from the upcoming film. Will it happen? Well, we'll just have to wait and see, as well as keep our eyes peeled towards Square Enix and Eidos Montreal to see if either drop any other hints, or let slip what Deus Ex The Fall really is. It's not wise to get too excited, but it's hard to hold back the anticipation, especially when a studio is publicly recognizing and requesting input on a potential sequel. For now, let's say there's definitely a chance that Deus Ex The Fall is a successor to Human Revolution, and it could very well be announced before the year's end. Augmented fingers crossed.